23 years, the sadistic tyrant Saddam Hussein rules Iraq with an utter contempt for humanity.
We're dealing with Hitler revisited, a totalitarianism and a brutality that is naked and unprecedented.
What is right and wrong to you and I isn't even a conscious thought.
Saddam Hussein, disarmed, diminished, defeated, was dragged from a hole in the ground on a cold winter night near Tikrit. Once a tyrant who ruled Iraq with an iron grip, he now appeared as a fugitive, unshaven, exhausted, and stripped of every trace of dignity. For a leader obsessed with immaculate grooming and absolute power, this was the unraveling of his legend. For decades, Saddam had imposed a brutal reign over Iraq, ruling from marble palaces and gold-plated halls, his portrait looming over every street, every school, every courtroom. Critics described him as part statesman, part monarch, part mob boss, part messiah, but always a master of fear. He cut down rivals, silenced dissent, and turned Iraq's sectarian wounds into weapons of political control. His influence stretched beyond Baghdad into the heart of West Asia, reaching further east as Saddam Hussein shaped a nation in his image. Born in 1937 in the village of Al-Auja near Tikrit, Saddam entered the world into the mud house of his uncle. His father, a landless peasant, had died before his birth, leaving his mother struggling to provide for him until she remarried. From an early age, violence seemed woven into his character. Declassified U.S. documents indicate that Saddam committed his first murder at the age of 12, targeting a local shepherd in secret. By his teenage years, the boy from Tikrit had embraced a world where power was won through blood and fear. At 18, he left his village for Baghdad, where he encountered the Ba'ath Party, an Arab nationalist movement that promised unity in a fractured Iraq. In a Shia-majority nation, the Sunni-led Ba'athists had sharpened sectarian divides into instruments of authority, and Saddam would wield them with ruthless precision. In 1959, Saddam participated in an assassination attempt against Iraq's prime minister. Some reports suggest the mission had CIA backing, part of Cold War strategies to curb Soviet influence, though the operation failed. Fleeing to Cairo, Saddam lived in exile while leading an underground Ba'athist cell. Egypt at the time was ablaze with the rhetoric of President Gamal Abdel Nasser, whose vision of Arab unity against Western dominance inspired Saddam's own ambitions. In exile, Saddam's strategy began to take shape. He would return to Iraq and seize power for himself. By 1963, he returned to Baghdad. Though his Ba'athist comrades successfully overthrew the government, it was only the beginning of a long climb. Power would not come quickly. In 1968, the Ba'ath Party decisively seized control, and Saddam's role in the new regime became central. The vice president, Ahmed Hassan al-Bakr, a cousin of Saddam, ascended to the presidency. At 31, Saddam knew that second place was never enough. He methodically filled the party with loyalists from his clan, cementing bonds of blood and loyalty that would shield him as he maneuvered toward absolute authority. During the early 1970s, Iraq experienced a fragile stability, helped by a temporary truce with Kurdish rebels. In March 1970, the government signed a historic autonomy agreement with the Kurds, promising limited self-rule and representation. During this calm, Saddam strengthened his grip on the party, the military, and the secret police, creating a formidable apparatus of surveillance and fear that would control the nation for decades. The truce eventually collapsed into bloodshed. Saddam's secret police unleashed a brutal crackdown on Kurdish uprisings, embedding terror deep into northern Iraq. Under Saddam, the Mukhabarat, the Iraqi intelligence service, watched, listened, and infiltrated every aspect of society. Homes, markets, and even mosques were under scrutiny. For ordinary Iraqis, survival meant speaking in silence, avoiding notice, and living with constant uncertainty. By July 1979, Saddam, backed by the secret police and loyal Ba'athists, persuaded President al-Bakr to step aside. In his place rose Saddam Hussein, now the undisputed ruler of Iraq. From that moment, Saddam's power was absolute. Barely days into his presidency, Saddam summoned hundreds of Ba'ath Party officials to a grand hall in Baghdad. One by one, names were read aloud. Men who had dined with him, fought beside him, and shared his ambitions were branded traitors. Some were dragged out as colleagues watched in terror. Others remained seated, unsure if their own name would be next. By the end of this orchestrated purge, dozens had been executed. Loyalty to Saddam was not a choice, it was survival. By the end of 1979, Saddam Hussein ruled unchallenged, with rivals eliminated and fear securing his reign. Just across the border, Iran's Islamic Revolution in 1979 had toppled the Shah, replacing him with Ayatollah Khomeini. For Saddam, a Sunni ruler in a Shia-majority country, this represented a direct threat. In 1980, he made a gamble. Iraq invaded Iran, seeking to crush the new regime and assert himself as the defender of the Arab world. What followed was 8 years of brutal stalemate. Trenches, chemical weapons, and mass graves scarred the region. 500,000 lives were lost on each side, and the conflict ended with no decisive victor. In desperation, Saddam turned his weapons inward, targeting the Kurds and Shia communities he deemed sympathetic to Iran. In March 1988, near the Iranian border, Iraqi planes dropped poison gas on the Kurdish town of Halabja, killing 5,000 civilians in a single day. Their bodies became silent proof of a massacre that would stain Saddam's name forever. With Iran temporarily subdued, Saddam's ambitions turned south toward Kuwait, a small but oil-rich nation he considered part of Iraq's rightful territory. In August 1990, his tanks crossed the border. The world watched in stunned silence. America and its allies responded with overwhelming force. President George H.W. Bush declared unequivocally that Saddam must withdraw or face war. The Gulf War had begun. Within months, Iraq's forces were defeated. The loss brought sanctions, isolation, and a slow strangulation of Iraq's economy. The Iraqi people suffered under embargoes, starving while Saddam's palaces grew taller and his paranoia deeper. The 2001 attacks on the United States further complicated Saddam's position. The Bush administration accused him of harboring terrorists and developing weapons of mass destruction, claims which became the central justification for military action. Saddam and his sons were given an ultimatum to leave Iraq within 48 hours. Their refusal triggered the US-led invasion of 2003. Baghdad fell swiftly. Statues toppled, the regime unraveled, and the symbols of Saddam's power were destroyed. His sons, Uday and Qusay, were killed in a US raid, but Saddam himself vanished, becoming a phantom in the ruins of his country. For months, he eluded capture, moving through the wreckage of a state he had once ruled with total control. Finally, in December 2003, acting on intelligence from a former bodyguard and relatives, U.S. forces found Saddam near his boyhood village of Tikrit. He was hiding in a spider hole, a cramped underground chamber barely large enough to lie down, with only a crude air vent and fan for breathing. Soldiers were seconds from tossing a grenade into the hole when Saddam emerged and surrendered. The capture was heralded as a turning point. The West hoped Iraq's spiral into chaos could now be halted. Saddam Hussein was tried in a court many still consider an instrument of victor's justice. On December 30, 2006, he was hanged for crimes against humanity. His last words were defiant, but the fall of Saddam Hussein was absolute. Yet the story of Iraq did not end at the gallows, where Saddam once ruled through fear, chaos, and militias surged. The promise of American democracy collided with insurgency, sectarian violence, and civil war. In the vacuum, new threats emerged, including the rise of ISIS. Though eventually defeated, they left Iraq further fractured, instability deepened, and the nation's social fabric torn. Saddam Hussein's rise, reign, and fall are a testament to the power of fear, ambition, and brutality. From the mud houses of Tikrit to marble palaces in Baghdad, he transformed Iraq, but at an extraordinary human cost. His manipulation of sectarian divisions, his purges, and his wars against neighbors marked decades of suffering. Saddam's regime left a legacy of terror and governance through intimidation, and his personal paranoia shaped the architecture of Iraqi society. Even after his death, his shadow lingered over a nation struggling to rebuild. Saddam Hussein's story is a reminder of how absolute power, unchecked by law or morality, can devastate a nation. He rose from obscurity to control a country for decades, using violence as both shield and sword. He leveraged charisma and fear, intelligence networks, and sectarian divisions to maintain an iron grip. Yet, in the end, it was a simple underground hole near Tikrit that ended his life as a free man, symbolizing the fragility of even the most ruthless dictators. Iraq, once unified under his rule, descended into chaos and conflict, illustrating how the fall of a single individual can reshape the fate of millions. His reign offers enduring lessons on leadership, power, and the human cost of tyranny. Saddam Hussein's life, full of violence, strategy, and ambition, remains a story of a man who sought to dominate a nation and a region, yet ultimately fell to the forces he could neither control nor predict. From the rise in Baghdad to the humiliation of his capture, Saddam's journey encapsulates the perilous interplay of ambition, fear, and history. Even today, Iraq bears the imprint of his rule, a landscape of division and struggle that continues to echo the legacies of one of the most notorious dictators of the modern era.